Welcome everybody to the Sports and Rec Committee meeting. Thank you for that. As we got here, I've got no apologies, but I have just got an apology for lateness from Councillor Laurie. And as you're aware, this is live video streamed, and as you'll see, we've got a small part in our public, and we've got our major items seen to be in our public excluded. So just a reminder with your public excluded documents to not leave them or dispose them if there's a place you can dispose them here if need be. So I'll move on. Confirmation of order of business is as in the agenda. I also ask if anybody's got any interest in any of the topics, please bring us either up now or just before the item comes up, or so, you know the drill there. Public forum, we were going to have Electrics Chair Sport come present, but they'd rather present in person rather than via Zoom, so that's going to be postponed to the November meeting. We have got two forum presentations, one from George Molnar of All Weather Turf Working Group and one of Philip Thompson of FC Nelson. As organisations, I'll give them 10 minutes, and I've got George Molnar first online via Zoom. Just a moment for that. Hi George, can you hear me?
Hi Tim, yes I can. I'll just try and put the sound up a bit.
Oh, good.
Okay, can we get
very good, very good. So now we can see you clearly. I think you guys can hear him. I like your backdrop. I feel like I'm on Star Trek putting a cross. But very good. I'll let you.
We thought we'd get the mood going.
Yeah, so hey, you've got 10 minutes and some questions if need be. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Tim. Morning councillors and Rachel. Yeah, my name's George Molnar. Today I'm going to be representing the leadership working group for Nelson City AstroTurf. We're forming this group. It's still in its early stages, but we have support currently from Sport Tasman, the colleges, FC Nelson, mainland football, obviously also, Tahuna FC, and the wider football community. So what we'd really like to do is just build this working group together for the main stakeholders who will potentially be using this ground in the future. This represents about 1,000 of the 2,500 players in our region. So if you take the top of Bishopdale and wrap it round Tahuna, and come back into Nelson City, you've got the two colleges, you've got Tahunanui FC, you've got FC Nelson, you've got NMIT. There's around about 1,000 players in that grouping, in that area. So these are the people and players that we're going to be focusing on in the beginning, but obviously we want a wider engagement with the rest of the players in the region. Just an interesting fact, when we've been talking to mainland and other people that have put these grounds in, the ratio of one turf is 1,000 players. So 1,000 players per one turf. So that's just something to note down. And obviously the numbers I've just talked about support one turf. I suppose our main objective is to realise a multi-sport use artificial turf in Nelson City, and to create a sports hub there. Today we're asking the council to recommend this project into the long-term plan for 2021 to 2031 for further consultation. So we understand this is just the start of a longer journey. If you were successful in getting that into the long-term plan, or we were together, we would be pushing for years 1 to 3 as a build time. And yeah, obviously as soon as possible to get that done. With this working group and leadership group that we're putting together, we would be very much supportive, and we would want to be on that journey all the way through to help with whatever's needed to get this project across the line. Obviously the two feasibility studies that have come out over the last 4 years, they have, without going in depth into them, but they've found that there's a need for it in our community. They've also established that they've recommended a position in the Nelson City, and that position has been named as Guppy Park. Now, we as a group support Guppy Park location and see it as another link to connecting green space with the central city, which the council has done a fantastic job of all the way around the river. We've got our cycleways, and I think this connecting of green space with the central city and close to walkway link, close to the skate park and close to the basketball court down at Neil Park really shows a lot of vision. And how we see it is creating a sports hub, sports rec hub down there at Neil Park. I think you as council and us as community and community leaders have a fantastic opportunity to promote the sport, and not just football, but all sport in our region, and our lifestyle, our well-being, our haora for the current and next generations to come. So, I really challenge you as a council. We've been on this journey for about 5 or 6 years. We're now on our second council that we are talking to, and it is quite strange talking to you over a monitor. But we've missed out on getting in the long-term plan once. We'd really love to get this project into the long-term plan when we can start really getting serious about numbers and how the project's going to roll out. From a business point of view, if we don't bring these type of facilities into Nelson, we are going to lose them to our outer regions. You just have to take a drive around. I'm in the building industry, and the growth from Richmond outwards is huge. That's where the population growth is. And once Tasman get over their dam project, they will be looking to put more infrastructure out there, which would be great as well. But I just think we've got a great opportunity as Nelson, ratepayers and community to create this hub right in the centre of town, which is going to keep Nelson vibrant. The cafe's busy, the motelier is busy, and we'll be looking to gather support over the next 6 weeks to the next meeting from all these businesses around the community. One thing, I travel around New Zealand quite a lot, and I would say with sport and with business, and I look at a lot of different regions, and I'd say that we're one of the major regions in New Zealand that really, we don't have turf. We don't have great sporting facilities. I think that's obviously disappointing for Nelson sports people. And I think we're also at a disadvantage. Our kids are at a disadvantage when they travel to other regions and see the facilities that other regions have and we don't have here. So we're losing days, we're losing training days, we're losing opportunities for our kids to play sport. And, the old adage about kids in sport, kids in sport stay out of court, so they say. So, I really think it's about our current generation and our next generation and really setting up some sporting facilities for the next 10, 20 years. One thing in the recommendation or the feasibility study is usage, and a lot of people talk about usage, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when I talk about money, but the usage is not going to be an issue. In fact, the usage is soon going to show that we actually need more than one. So I think if you look at English Park in Christchurch, we've been talking to Mainland, it's getting used 5 hours per day, that's chargeable per week, plus nearly double that in the weekends. Now through the day, that English Park is getting used by schools as well. So it's the usage is very, very high. I'd also like to add, and I know Phil's going to talk a little bit about this, but we do have an amazing event coming up, depending on what happens with COVID, of course, and around the rest of the world. But in 2023, we are going to be joint hosting the World Cup, the Women's World Cup here in New Zealand. So I think that's well worth noting in the minutes that this is a global event that's coming to our shores, and hopefully it does still happen. And, you know, there's an opportunity for our region if we have great facilities. Environmentally, so obviously the report that's come back to council about environment is very important. The report raises some environmental issues around turfs around the country and how they're made. I think we can take this as an opportunity and challenge and create and potentially create the best environmentally friendly AstroTurf in New Zealand together. Of course, we don't want anything that's bad for the environment, but this must also be offset with the other widespread benefits that we get from these types of investments for the city and for the community. And I think we obviously all know, but AstroTurf doesn't need mowing, doesn't need any fertilizer, doesn't grow weeds, and obviously it's not affected by drought. So there's some real benefits here that offset some of the negative environmental effects. But as part of our working group, we really will look into those environmental issues. There's a lot of case studies done around the country, and I think the way these turfs are put together, the way they're constructed around the edges, the way the drainage is done, really makes a massive difference to that environmental impact to the community. So yeah, I think this really does need to be looked into at depth, and this will be obviously part of the longer consultation process once we've got this into the LTP. Hopefully I'm not taking too much time here, Tim, but nearly.
You're good. You've got a couple of minutes.
Couple of minutes, right? Costs. I know costs is on the tip of everyone's tongue. Look, there's a lot of costs that have been done. We've got the Logan Park project that happened in the south. We've got Mainland with their projects that they've done in Christchurch. So we have a lot of data around costs. At the moment, the costs are a little bit dependent on earthworks, you know, and it's like any building. You can be certain once you get out of the ground, or more certain. So we're looking at somewhere between $2 to $2.3 million for one field. Now, it was really interesting when we were talking to Mainland, and you know, we know this in our business. When we do multiple jobs at a time, you end up with a bit of an economy of scale, so to speak. So something that crossed our mind was, we talked about what would happen if we actually put two of these things in side by side, and what would that do to the cost. So $2 to $2.3 million to put one in. If you put two of them side by side at the same time, you would save around about $500,000. So, you know, that goes hand in hand with the usage. And I know that's a bit of a think big type thing. We really just want to get one, obviously, but for cost, if we could afford it, two side by side would give us absolute usage. We could cross codes, and obviously we'd have that saving by doing two at a time. And that brings me to a point which you're probably all well aware of. The cost of building will never be cheaper than today. So the longer this goes on, because I believe we will end up having one at some point, it's only going to get more expensive. So building anything, never as cheap as it is today.
George, just coming up, just gone 10 minutes. Is there anything you want to close on that? I'll give it a shot. Just
quickly on the cost, there's 28,000 Ks of $28,000 per annum for maintenance. Every 10 years, we're up for about $900,000 of for renewal. But for usage, and we've worked out our usage on 5 hours per day, 5 days a week, plus weekends, which is about 40 hours, at $70 per hour, because we'll be renting this space out. Over 25 weeks brings us in $70,000. That will obviously pay for the annual maintenance, and it will give us $700,000 over 10 years to cover the renewal costs. So, you know, I think the costs are going to look after themselves. The usage is there. What we're after is some commitment from the council to get into the long-term plan, so this working group, this leadership group, can really come together and put a very strong plan together to help get this across the line for our community.
Thank you, George. Thank you for the presentation there. I'll go questions. I've got Brian, Matt, Pete, Judine. I think if we just keep them fairly succinct.
Yeah, I know we're pressed for time, so I'll keep this short. Thanks very much, George, for your presentation. Just one question. You talked about 1 turf for 1,000 players, and you've got 1,000 that you're looking at. Would you see, and 5 hours a day at English Park, you know, the proposition you're putting to us looks like it's just basically all for football. So there's not the capacity with 1 turf for any other codes or any other use.
Yeah, sorry, who was I? Who?
Brian McGurk here.
Hi, Brian. Yep. Hey, thank you very much for that question. And I think what you've picked up on very quickly is the usage around turf. And when I was talking to Tim Tucker up at the Boys College, and we were talking about usage, because they're looking at putting something up there, an AstroTurf, the usage is going to be absolutely not an issue through the roof. So at the moment, I've based my numbers on all football, yes. Now, that's not to say we can't have other codes come in and use it whenever they like, whenever they book it. But at the moment, the numbers stack up for football. There's enough footballers to have for the usage for 1 turf. Brian.
Thank you, George. We've got Matt.
Thanks,
Laurie.
Kia ora, George. Kia ora, Phil. My question is about collaboration.
Yes.
A while ago, we saw you guys, saw FC Nelson, and we saw the Tasman Rugby Union both presenting in the chamber about an artificial turf.
Yep.
The last time we heard from Tony Lewis from the Tasman Rugby Union, he said that they wanted it to be at Trafalgar Park and they were opposed to Guppy Park. And they said if it was going to be at Trafalgar Park, they'd put in $200,000.
Yep.
Does this suggest that you two are no longer on the same page?
Okay, well, yeah, thanks, Matt. There's a couple of things there. And one thing I didn't get to, I didn't quite get to my summarisation of costs. It was interesting that Tony offered 200,000, and hopefully that will still be on the table wherever the turf is, because you know, there will certainly be times that rugby can use it. At the moment, we're not talking to each other currently. I think what we need to, as part of this group, get together and find out what the roadblocks for rugby are around Guppy Park. Interestingly, that this feasibility studies come back saying that it doesn't really fit at Trafalgar Park, and Guppy Park is the logical spot for it. At the end of the day, we just want a turf in Nelson somewhere, but I think we need to also look and make sure that wherever we put it, we have future planning for it. So at Guppy Park, you can clip another one on the end of it, on the side of it, in 10 years' time. At Trafalgar Park, you can't do that. Just on the money side of things, with our funding, with this group that we're putting together and talking with Mainland, talking with Sport Tasman, and obviously been involved in the football club for quite a while, we have our funding organisations that we go to, and this group is very confident if we get a bit of go forward from the council, that we can raise anywhere between 20 and 40%. So that's $460,000 to $920,000. So I'm not going to sit here and say we're not going to collaborate with rugby. What I'd like to say is that the usage around one turf will be fully filled up currently by football, by half of the football community. And I understand the collaboration. I just think if we're going to have rugby come on, and if you look at Logan Park was set up with 2 fields. One field is more appropriate for rugby, one is more appropriate for football. So there's a lot more investigation to go, I think, around the type of turf if we're going to have rugby and football using the same field.
Thank you. I'll move on. Any other questions there? Councillor, I'll go to Councillor Rainey and then Councillor Edgar.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. George, thanks for the presentation. I certainly think this is a great idea, and as you say, it's been a long time coming. I want to know what appetite you have for, in terms of a community, if the funding percentage that you asked to contribute would be higher than 20 or 40%, say 60%, 70%, 80%. Have you considered that as a possibility?
Absolutely, Pete, and thanks for raising that. We're actually sitting around the table last night and going, who in the community would want to not necessarily put their name on it, but who could come to the party to help us with some more money. And at the moment, I mean, there's several people in the community that could come to the table. We're sure once we get this leadership group formed properly, and I'm pretty confident that we could at least have a go at it, Pete, you know. But what we can't do is go to them with, oh, this is an idea where, you know, we're not sure if it's going to go or not. We don't even think, we're not sure how the council, whether they're backing it or not. So we'd need a little bit more certainty from the council. And I think once we get into the long-term plan, we can really start going to some of these other funders, independent funders.
Thanks for that. A subsequent question really quickly. I'm aware that the renewal costs are actually pretty high, you know, 900,000 every 10 years. So I'm not quite sure how long these things last. I guess they can keep on being rolled around. But for argument's sake, a 20-year lifespan on the facility would indeed mean that there would be close to $2 million worth of renewals in that time. Well, you would be renewing it at the end of 20 years. Would you expect the renewal cost to be 100% on council? I heard what you said about when you said you did the maths on the user charges. It didn't seem quite to add up in my mind. So, because indeed the renewal cost is extremely high. I'd be interested to know if you had any comments about that.
So, sorry, who was that?
Councillor Rainey.
Oh, that was Pete again, was it?
Yep. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, Pete. Look, they do look to renew them every 10 years. English Park's just about up for renewal, and it's around about 900 grand every time you renew them. We've got on my figures I said before, and that's over a revenue of 25 weeks. Remember, so I've been very conservative on the numbers. It's a revenue over 25 weeks of the usage at $70 per hour. We're $200,000 short per year on that renewal cost. Oh, sorry, $200,000 short in a 10-year period. So the surplus on that revenue is $700,000 over 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got Councillor Edgar and then Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, George. I mean, look, my question has possibly been raised by Councillor Rainey. I was again about percentages, because I note that for all of the Saxton Field sport developments, sporting facilities, that Nelson City Council has put in 43%, and the remaining 57% has been external funding. And some projects, of course, have also been fully funded. But in your answer to Pete, I think you addressed that you will look to be raising a higher percentage than initially indicated.
Yeah, well, thank you, Edgar. Yeah, look, I think we have to work together on it. I think there needs to be a commitment together to want to do this. And once we have the commitment together, we can then go looking for more funding. You know, funding is always going to be a challenge. There's no question about that. But to be honest, I just wanted to make sure my number was higher than rugby.
Any more, Councillor? I've got Councillor Fulton, Councillor Kate Fulton.
Thank you. It's Councillor Kate Fulton here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Kate. Hi.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and I note that you talked about wanting to be environmentally aware and sustainable. So you'll be aware then that plastic contributes 6% of greenhouse gas emissions globally, and so this is a significant amount of plastic going into an artificial turf. Have you done the calculations in terms of the embodied carbon and how many trees you would have to plant to offset the embodied carbon of your turf?
Look, Kate, thanks for your question. And look, we live in a fantastic region.
Yeah.
We are, you know, environment is very front of mind, but like I've said, it's actually not a specialised area for me. There's a lot of papers written on it, and I think there does need to be a lot of work put into it. I've been around the country, I've looked at a lot of different turfs, and it's amazing how they do vary from one to the other. And in that feasibility report that came out, there was a picture of a turf that looked old and horrible, and it had all the rubber coming out, spewing out the side gate, and I didn't like that. We don't want to end up with something like that. If you go up to Petone or Lower Hutt, Wellington have a turf up in there. It's absolutely pristine. You don't see any of that. They've got perimeter fencing. They've got great drainage. So I think if we really look into the type of turf we get and we don't skimp, then we will get a fantastic surface that is as environmentally friendly as possible. Nothing's perfect though, Kate, you know. Everything that we do leaves a footprint. So, you know, we have to balance whatever we put into the community with what we get out of it. And that's, I suppose that's where I sit on it. Like I say, I'm not an expert, so we're willing as a group to look into more detail of that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I think that sums up. Unless anyone got a question from Madam Mayor.
Tēnā koe, George, it's Rachel. George, one thing I'm interested in is we build assets, but actually I'm interested in the activity that goes around those assets and the connecting of people.
Yes.
One thing that you're talking about large numbers of people playing sport, and I'm interested in your demographic and a particular focus over the next few years. And so this is a big question for you around football. We're looking at significant rise in unemployment as a result of COVID-19 and our young people being disproportionately impacted. So social connection is going to be really important to getting through this next few years. What is football's strategy and engagement in terms of youth development programs? Have you got a greater focus coming in that area? And because what I'm hearing is big numbers and potentially through this an opportunity for greater social connection, but it would need football to actually engage in a greater program, and I don't know if you've got capacity to do that.
Yeah, thanks Rachel for raising that. You're probably aware, but a year ago I stepped down from the chair of FC Nelson. So even though I'm very connected with football still, and I'm in a support role. Really, my role today is around trying to help out getting this turf working group or leadership group together. So Phil's going to talk soon a little bit more about what football's doing around that. But I totally agree that the connection. This is just another step forward to really connecting our community with sport, and even with some of the developments that are happening around the fringes of our city. And if I can mention the Maitai potential development up there with 500 odd houses, there's going to be a lot of people wanting to come into our city and we need to be providing good facilities for them. And I think it's just another link, Rachel, to your city, our city, and the wider community.
Thanks, George. Maybe we'll have a longer conversation with Phil. Thanks.
Hey, thank you for that, George. Thank you for the presentation and thank you for the questions. I'll hand over to our next presenter, but thank you very much for your time there, George. I'm sure we'll have probably more questions.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Appreciate your time.
So I've just got a moment. I've just got a moment for them to change over. So as you see, we've got Philip Thompson of FC Nelson. I'll give him a moment to get seated.
That was easy.
Hey, cheers, Philip. So thank you for coming today. You've got 10 minutes. I know we've got a fair bit over time with George's presentation, but there's some good questions there you may have heard from the councillors, but I'll let you begin.
Thanks. Thank you all. Hi, if you don't know me, I'm Phil Thompson. I'm now the president of FC Nelson. We as a club, as George mentioned, have been working together on the artificial turf for the last 6 years. And as you know, the feasibility study that you guys funded stated that Guppy Park is a preferred location for the artificial surface. Whether you know or not, Guppy has been the home ground of FC Nelson since 1968, when the original Nelson United was formed. I wish to state now that FC Nelson are completely supportive of the study's findings. We agree that it's time to sacrifice the old grass field down at Guppy and create an all-weather community sporting facility at Guppy. We believe the timing's right and that FC Nelson, as a club, in line with mainland football and Sports Tasman, have the drive and the capabilities to make this project happen. While the single largest user would be football, we all know that, we would want the turf to be available to all other sports and recreational codes, community organisations, and for casual use by groups and individuals. We believe the facility will provide a variety of sports and users with the ability to undertake their activity without the concern of pitch condition. It will reduce existing ground maintenance costs and provide an asset to the city. It will help free up the other grounds for alternate use, ensure players can reach their potential and fall in love with their respective sports. But it's pertinent to consider the softer and longer term opportunities a facility can offer. These include improved health and well-being through the links between increased participation and physical activity, which could contribute to longer term positive impacts into our community. We as a club, quite honestly, have seen the decline in our membership over the last few years. This is a combination of the lack of available training facilities and the poor condition of natural grass surfaces. This therefore comes as no surprise. Part of our research has indicated that the numbers of 16 to 25-year-olds playing moderate football, not competitive football, has declined in the last 5 years. This is down to inflexible times, conflict with other activities, the quality of the pitches, and the increased cost of playing. We do see Guppy as our home. And yes, we would hope to maximise this significant investment for our members and the local football community, but we wish to approach this opportunity with a different focus. A Guppy Park sports hub will be that focus. The hub would support the turf with improved changing facilities, changing rooms, and provide meeting rooms and gathering spaces for others from the sporting and recreational community. A real community hub. I'm talking skateboarders, basketballers, walkers, and mountain bikers. The local community can use this facility late into the evening, a situation that not only increases possible revenue streams, but also allows people to feel part of the community investment. A community would develop around this shared use. And to us, it would connect Guppy Park and Neil Park with the rest of the city. We've already employed art house architecture to develop conceptual plans and have started raising funds towards the hub facility. We believe as a club that due to the durability of the artificial surface, surrounding teams, schools and colleges will be able to use the turf regularly. Personally, I hope the likes of Central School and Auckland Point will be provided with free of charge access to this facility. FC Nelson as a club have a vision to expand our youth, ladies and disability teams, considerably increasing the number of players directly involved in the club, and also increasing the number of people who become aware of it as parents and supporters. We as a club provide opportunity and experience for many who have originated from or are part of our refugee community. I'm very, very proud to work with guys from the Nepalese community, the Karenni community, the Bhutanese community, the Chin community, and even the Colombian community. They are all part of our club, but we strive to do more with these cultures and communities. By building such a facility, we not only free up some lesser used ground for repurposing, but the bigger win is that we allow the current grounds time to be renovated and recover following the winter and summer seasons. Many of our primary grounds, which were high quality, have now deteriorated to the point of becoming a health and safety concern. While Nelson's population is expected to grow slowly, we do expect football to continue growing, especially with the influence of our new communities previously mentioned. So in summary, we believe from a football perspective, specifically these areas will be positively impacted by an all-weather facility. Junior football, youth football, masters football, girls and women's football. The largest sports code in Nelson would have a dedicated home. We'd be able to play in the evening, freeing up parents and caregivers to spend more time with their family. We'd have scheduled training times which wouldn't be affected by weather. Nelson will become a premium location to host national or inter-federation tournaments. Clubs and players would have access to a quality playing surface all year round. We'd be able to nurture an inclusive culture for football with combined events and competitions, bringing different age groups and sexes together, particularly in the youth and junior space. We would hope to create a buzz and sense of excitement in football and building on the interest of the FIFA World Cup in 2023. We would hope the likes of the National League side, Tasman United, and the local Premier League teams would also have a dedicated training base. We would see a reduction in injuries, meaning lower load on our medical resources and improved short and long-term health. Schools would have access to a multi-football facility. We think from an FC point of view that it'd be a great investment for the community. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Phil. Good presentation. I've got a few questions from, first up, Matt, Councillor Laurie.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Phil, and thanks for your passion and all the energy you put into FC Nelson. It's a great club. As you know, I love football, and my ambition in life is to one day be as good at the beautiful game as you are, Phil, because you are a very good footballer. But I've got some concerns, and I just want to fire two of them at you right now.
Yeah.
One is that I know there are people around this table, and we've heard it from people in the community, that if we put an artificial turf on Guppy Park, that is going to restrict the public's access to that public land. And it will also have impact for people who live in the area because of the lighting that would be required. What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Matt. I'll answer the second question first. I agree. It will make a change of use of the recreational space. Presently, Guppy Park are surrounded by I suppose, low decile housing, and there's very little interaction between the football club and the local community. I see this artificial pitch actually taking down those barriers and giving greater accessibility to the local residents, which I think is incredibly important. As I sort of stated in my presentation, the hub, the building itself will be part of bringing people into that space. We expect Guppy to be used far more as a result of this investment than it is now. If those of you spend any time there, you'll see occasional dog walker and football played at the weekend. We would hope that that space will be used, not quite 24/7, but certain 7 days a week.
Okay, but would it need to be fenced through the chair?
We would have a low, the concept and the images we've seen of other turfs, there'll be a low fence which would prevent hoodlums driving motor cars or riding motorbikes across the surface, but enough, not a barrier to the public, but a barrier to people who want to cause destruction.
Okay, thanks. My second question through the chair is, you talk about the reduction in participation in football, and the reasons for that as you see it. But isn't that happening with team sports generally across the board? And isn't it largely because young people in general, just have more options now, from mountain biking to Minecraft?
Absolutely agree with you. And without simply focusing on our, let's say, refugee community, the boys that we spend a hell of a lot of time playing football with have not the option or the available use to go mountain biking, or probably even to play Minecraft. We see this as such an important part of our community to get people back playing sport, not necessarily playing football, but back playing sport.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Mel Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to you, Phil. Councillor Courtney speaking. Phil, you need to allay my concerns, and the concerns I would suggest around the whole table here. Earlier, George said that there was no communication, no talk with rugby. Not speaking with rugby. Now, as president, what are you going to do to correct that? Because we feel strongly at this council that community is everything, and it's important that the codes talk to one another. So what are you going to do to restore that working relationship?
I suppose the good news is I played rugby for 24 years before I turned to football. I probably got greater passion for rugby than I have football. I've got children that have played rugby. So to me, there doesn't need, and I've never believed there should be a barrier between the two codes. Again, once we get an acceptance to go into the long-term plan, our absolute commitment will be to bring all sporting codes together. Hopefully I can talk as a rugby person on behalf of the football public, and likewise we can bring the guys from Tasman Rugby together with football. I'd hope that whatever we produce is equal for both sports, and it would be my intention to do that. I think the Marcos, and I think what Nelson Rugby does for the community is fantastic, and it's something that we want to be part of rather than fight against.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. Any other questions? Hey, thank you, Philip. I think you presented extremely well there and answered a lot of questions. I'm sure there may be other questions may come up, but I'm more than happy to pass those on to you. But thank you for both the presentations that we end the public forum. Cheers, Phil. Cool. Thank you everyone for that. Those presentations and questions. We'll move on. I've got confirmation of minutes, which is pages 7 to 14. Has anyone picked up anything there, or happy that they're a true and accurate record? If you're happy with it, can I have someone move? Moved by Councillor Brand. Can I have someone second? Councillor O'Neill-Stevens, thank you. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. That moves us to the Chairman's report, which you've got tabled in front of you. I'll just quickly go through that. As you know, it's a change of season, and I enjoy spring, not just for the sort of the summer sports coming up, but I like the smell of the cut and growing grass on the lawn. But this week, as you know, is Te Wiko Te Reo Māori Language Week. So this week, 14th to 20th, and Kauanga Manura is for spring, and as I just mentioned before, and that's from the Māori term of that was seasons of planting and digging. Technically, I thought, well, I would keep trying to think, when does officially spring start? But I discovered that there is actually no one official day. If you do it meteorologically, or if you do it by astronomically or solar, or when Mother Nature decides to bloom, you probably notice one end of a brook springs to spring earlier than the other end of a brook. So maybe Sport and Rec could define an official day, but we'll put it out there for the rest of the country to follow. I think the rest of the country lags behind us when it gets warm in spring. But moving on, as you know, the gardens, I've mentioned in previous reports, I love our formal, as much as running around on our open spaces, I love our formalised gardens. So they're looking great in colour and the associated perfumes. for his bloom from Queen's Gardens to Isle Park. And, you know, with the cherry blossom, which is a great event, which is run by what's the Japanese Society and the sister city, the Miyazu Sister City Association. And we have beautiful cherry trees, which once again is one of those plantings which have council staff have planted years gone by, thinking well ahead. But unfortunately, due to COVID, I believe that's been cancelled. But saying that, nature hasn't cancelled the blooms, so you're welcome to obviously enjoy that anytime. Have a picnic. It's great hills there to have a picnic. I always think it's a bit like Teletubby land, just sitting underneath those rows of hills, small mounds, and the cherries are expecting a rabbit to pop up, but all good. I see that might be a little bit off topic. With that, I see New Zealand, Nelson Airport, but voted the best regional airport in New Zealand, and I think we're talking about events and stuff coming into Nelson. I see that from Monday just gone, they're removing those barriers of spacing on the seats. So I like to think seat prices will drop and you'll get more people into Nelson for such events as we kick into the summer season. You've probably seen on the newspaper and from council documents coming through that there was a Nelson Mountain Bike Club applied for some funding, 37k, which they secured, and that was through the what was it called? The dirt fund, the Santa Cruz. I think it's funded by the Santa Cruz, funded by that bicycle company. And also asked, well, why are they giving money away? But they like to invest, putting money in to areas, and it helps, they know, for events coming up for usage. And that's obviously I think it puts a flag up, confirms that Nelson internationally has been seen as a place to come to ride. So I thought that take that, and that's helped with funding. We've already put a lot of money into funding for trails in Nelson, but to have international organisations say, hey, we'd like to put some money in with no strings attached, is a great signal. In fact, I read that we are the only place in the Southern Hemisphere that received that funding. Most of it goes to North America. So obviously we and the users of the parks are doing the right things. And I won't elaborate any further, but you know, the dog park is just about to be all go, I think early, mid next month. There's been some great communication back on that. So that's an example of the annual plan, a long-term plan taking its place in the previous, and the public pushing on us and saying, hey, we want this, and then we're putting the LTP, and then coming back saying very much a desire for it, and that pushes us to get those wheels moving, and that's what we have today. Natureland Wildlife Trust, you'll see they had some tour on a few months back, a little tuatara, and after 7 months they've grown to not much bigger than your thumb, but just they've got 7 of those popped up, which is pretty amazing. As you know, with tuatara, they take 3 to 5 years before they give hatchlings, and what I didn't know, they spend 3 years just for the egg to develop, I believe, in the mother. When you think chickens, it just seems to take 24 hours. They pop one out. That's quite a different story for a tuatara. So pretty amazing. I call them little baby dinosaurs, but if you had a chance to go down there, for something to happen in a captivity situation, that's pretty amazing. And that also adds to their kakariki and kaka breed and release program. But also, you remember the Tahuna skate ramp that was put in down Tahuna, which I've had some pretty huge feedback, not just from kids, but even adults reliving their youth down there. But I see there was an eye-catching mural's been painted on it, and I know I've only got his name as Smeagol, but as much as I look, I can't find his real name. He prefers to call himself Smeagol, the artist. Someone might know. Clarified dog park up here. I've got next completion, so I realised that. So the completion is later on next year, but I believe it's still getting set up this year. So it's going to be. It started, so you have access to it, but for some of the play equipment in there won't be till later in the year. So that started in October. That'll be set up, accessible. I don't want to put pressure on our staff if there's been a delay. No, so I realised that there've been queries about the date because there were 2 dates thrown around. There's an October coming up, and later on in the year or next year. The reality is it's opening up this next month, but for all the infrastructure in there, you may have to be a little bit patient for that. Due to COVID, I'm told, but I think that's I think you'll enjoy it even as an open space in their fence, and dogs and the dog owners will enjoy space in there without worrying about other users other side of the fence. And as I said before, I might even bring my cat along, but we'll see. But yeah, I haven't checked it out yet. The skate ramp, I've seen pictures of it. It's looking pretty bright and enticing. But I'll leave it at that. That's enough from me. We'll move on. I guess I need someone to, have I got any questions in regards to the chair's report?
I could ask a question if no one else is.
Yeah, fire away.
Well, let's go to point 2.4. You raise the possibility of Nelson being the first in New Zealand to choose a day or a date for spring.
Yep.
I walked the stairs with you this morning, Mr. Chair, and you definitely, no question about it, you had a wide gait. You were taking 3 steps to my 1, but you definitely had a spring in your step. And I think, well, if this committee can help you, what about the 17th of September? What about today? Yeah, there you go. Perfect day.
And it's Nick Randy's birthday. Well, there you go. Make it a national day, did you say?
Well, I'd be happy to support that. Can I just muscle in on Councillor Courtney and just say, indeed, it is my birthday, but I just want to say that your chair's report, look, it's just abundant, full of poetry and images of doggies bounding around parks and
baby dinosaurs.
It's truly lifted my spirit. I just would like to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll move with excitement. I'll move.
So yeah, I thank you recognising my poetic and the young lamb spring in my step. Oh, you kept up with me, I recall. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The news about the funding for the track from the Pay Dirt Fund set up by Santa Cruz Bicycles is fantastic news. I just wanted to highlight that the agents for Santa Cruz in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, are a Nelson couple, Mike Staliano and Sandra Williams, and it's their company, Hyper Performance Hardware. They've done a huge amount of work to get Santa Cruz sort of established and to grow it in New Zealand. And I'd say there's more people in Nelson riding Santa Cruz mountain bikes per capita, probably, than anywhere else in the world. They're all over the place, and so I think there's probably a connection between their hard work and that funding. And also Alistair Matthew at Get Gravity in Bridge Street also doing great stuff with the brand, which is one of the reasons I suspect the money has come to this part of the world. I just wanted to give them credit. I just want to give credit where credit is due.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So that track I see is going to be ideal for the Enduro coming up, and I'll expect a number of you guys to be entering it onto your, have you got a Santa Cruz bike? No? Okay. Cool. I think I'll leave my fat bike at home and come and watch, but I'll enjoy watching you guys run down that. Hey, I think I've got Councillor Fulton. And
thank you, Councillor Skinner. Yes, through the chair, what an excellent chair's report, and thank you for sharing all of this great stuff that's happening around the city with us. I think it's particularly worthy to note that there are 7 Tuatara babies. I think that's just incredible. What an amazing success for Natureland, and I just think that's fantastic news. My question is, I also note that you've talked about the kakariki and kaka breeding, and I know they've had some breed and release. I thought it was into the Able Tasman, and I'm just wondering if you know how they're working with the Brook Sanctuary to start to do some breed and release into there, if at all, whether that relationship's developing or not.
Yeah, I mean, I believe they both, I mean, they were something that have talked in the past together with it, and I see both parties have been sort of, I see on their Facebook posts of, and I'm sure it's informally as well, encouraging each other in their activities. But yeah, that's something when I've spoken to them both individually to keep in mind, but I'm sure, and they have mentioned in the past, they definitely are kept in mind, but that was a sort of discussion about breeding on at the sanctuary versus breeding at Natureland and working together.
Yeah. But
I know they have been, and with their new committee at the Natureland, they have very much been in talks.
I just think that having been to Zealandia recently and seen the kaka and kakariki in there, and it was an amazing highlight to see kakariki in the wild. I'd never seen that before. They're very colourful, brightly coloured, and they had a feeding, so they had a certain time when they fed them and they'd all fly into so quite an amazing photo opportunity. There were people with cameras this size waiting for the kakariki to fly, and so quite a magical experience to see kakariki and kaka in the wild, and I'm hoping we have that happen at the Brook
definitely
Sanctuary into the future.
But I do know they've been very successful in releasing them in the Kahurangi National Park there. And
is it Kahurangi or Able Tasman? Or both?
Tasman or with the
okay. Yeah. Well, I look forward to hearing more about that.
Very good. No, thank you for that, Kate. Very good. I've got Madam Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to hopefully get some endorsement from the committee at this point, just in relation to the dog park.
Yep.
Now, I'm not sure whether it's a soft opening or it should be at the soft opening or the bells and whistles opening, but I would ask that perhaps former Councillor Barker is invited to open the dog park.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Given his absolute passion for this project, and this is you know, for those of you who are first-term councillors, sometimes the projects that you champion for a decade actually come to fruition once you've left council.
No, very good. Barker Park, wasn't it?
I think we should actually call it Barker Park.
Yeah, that's right. Remember.
Mr. Chair, I didn't want to quite go to that point until we'd had the conversation with Councillor Barker, former Councillor Barker.
Very good. I thank you for that. No, definitely. I'll keep it in mind. I'll leave that with the. I'll leave that with the staff, and I'll leave that with the spring report as well. No, I'll leave it. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Mayor. And I know when I started this meeting off acknowledging that it's a week of Te Reo Māori Language Week this week, and I saw you had a great post there, Madam Mayor, with the Māori Week and presenting on that. So it inspired me. Done very well.
Well, I'm hoping, Mr. Chair, that I'm going to see all of you, or most of you, appear with your mihi. It'll be fantastic. It'll be kapai for all of us.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're waiting for them as well. There were a number of us who did them, but for some reason they haven't posted. The council hasn't, comms team hasn't posted them.
Very good. Cool. I've got Councillor McGee.
Yeah, just speaking of heritage, I suppose there is a uniquely Nelson holiday of spring. It's called Spud Monday, the first Monday in August. It's a uniquely Nelson holiday.
That's right.
That was. Oh well, it should be. It should be.
We'll keep 17th of September in mind.
To mark the day when they spuds to prevent the sort of starvation when the first European settlers arrived. So there's something else you could try to chuck in there. Spud Monday.
Spud Monday, we'll make a note of that. Cool. Hey, thank you for that. Ngā mihi nui. Oh, we did have someone move and second it. Is that right? We had move of us, right? I had Brand and O'Neill Stevens. We've had the questions. Thank you for that. We'll put it. Those in favour of accepting that? Aye. Those against? Thank you for your kind responses to that Chairman's report. I'll move on to the quarterly report. Do you guys need a little moment to stretch your legs or carry on? We'll do the quarterly report. We'll get it started and we'll go from there. Cool. So pages 15 to 46.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So just to introduce this report, I do just want to stress that it is covering the last two quarterly reports. And those quarters have, as you're well aware, been severely impacted by COVID-19. So you'll see that through quite a lot of the financials and also through the activities. The information in the report was as up to date as possible at the time of writing. So some of it may go beyond July as well, trying to provide that information for you. I'd just like a point of clarification at 9.4 with relation to the Saxonfield Reserve Management Plan, and that in May and June, we went out to the public to ask for feedback on the on Saxonfield, but actually the Saxonfield committee is tomorrow. We'll be discussing the draft before the actual draft goes out to public consultation. And also a correction at 12.4, where the event discount rate, since writing this report, both the Big Brother and Big Sister and the Annesbrook Church Christmas events have cancelled due to uncertainties around COVID-19. Happy to take any questions around the report.
Very good. Any questions? Thank you, and thank you for those questions that I emailed through earlier. Thank you. I've got Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I just had a couple of questions on the Nelson Marina, just I guess, the engagement process that may be undertaken as part of that work. We've had a number of submissions, most recently in the to this annual plan, but we do know that there've been a lot of submissions over the years with concerns raised around various aspects of governance, management and development of the marina. So I'm just wondering if we're going to, at the very least, be following through with those submitters, and then just the timing around this, because it was talking about 12.9 draft proposals presented May 2021. So just exactly how that feeds into an LTP timing for any changes that we're looking at for the marina.
Through the chair, if I could ask Mr. Petheram to respond to that.
Mr. Chair, is it fine if I take the question from here?
Yep, that's fine.
Councillor Edgar, yes, we'll require the consultant to conduct that engagement with the people who've made submissions to us. The engagement process, I believe, will have to be fairly extensive because there's quite a large amount of interest in it. And then when we get to the next stage, if council chooses to go down a particular track, then I imagine that the consultation will have to be extensive. That's probably the earliest that we can get that information back to us with regards to the long-term plan. I don't think we can bring it back any sooner than that. There's quite a lot of work to be done.
So if I could just follow up on that, Mr. Chair. So does that still provide any opportunity within the LTP scheduling to then at least forward schedule work into the LTP?
Yes, we believe it does, but however, we don't know what the extent of the recommendations will be at this stage.
Okay, thank you. And then just another marina question, and it just sort of came up from the update on the Sea Sports building. Just, there is the old information caretakers, whatever you call it, building that's down there that's being currently used as a, I guess you could call it, junk storage facility. Just wondering what's happening with that. Is there thoughts to lease it out, deconstruct, relocate, etc.?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll take that one as an answer. So that the building you're talking about is the old marina supervisor's building, that sort of tall one that looks out over the marina. It's had an initial seismic rating that puts it as at less than the new building standard, and we haven't prioritised any work to do further investigation on what's needed to bring it up to code yet. There probably would be interest, or there is interest in people leasing that building if it was up to standard.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so any investigations or considerations going to be scheduled in the AMP rather than just leaving the building sitting there with an uncertain future?
Thank you. Yes, through the chair, we'll need to budget for an action on that building through the AMP, and it may be that we don't know yet the cost of what the different options are, or what the cost benefit of the different options are, until we've had that seismic advice back.
Yeah. No, that's great. As long as there's some investigations or something going to happen, that's good. And staff have answered my other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. One is on page 22, relating to the camp compliance update, section 6.1, and it says in there that on-site visits took place for July to visit semi-permanent occupants and permanent occupants of the campgrounds to introduce the occupants to the survey and to ensure the occupants understood what was taking place, the process. That was a large exercise. Has that been completed, and was everyone home, and did they understand?
Through the chair, thanks for that question. Yes, it has been a big exercise. So there was public sessions for the residents to come and speak to us so that they fully understood what the surveys were about. We will be reporting back on the 5th of November Sport and Recreation Committee with the findings of that. So in relation to the question, were they all home? I haven't quite got those details in front of me, but it wasn't 100%, but we did have a very good strike rate of going back. So I think there was 148 residents in total whose structures have been surveyed as part of that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased about that. And the other question was, when was the survey results coming back? And so you've said the 5th of November. But it's incredibly important that you go out and talk to them face to face. So I think that's excellent. My next question is to do with, dearie me, now where is it? Here it is. It's on page 29, 12.18, and it's to do with the adopt a spot. Now, this really appeals to me, and I think it shows here, and it appeals to everyone around the table, by the way, but I want some more information on that, because you say that currently there are 37 adopt a spot groups operating in the parks and reserves, and there's 12 newcomers since the COVID-19 lockdown. That's incredible to involve the community. When did this first start?
Through the chair. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry, Viv Dyack, who's the coordinator for our Adopt a Spot program's not here currently. I think she's actually out in the field with a program today, looking at planting programs. So council has for some time had volunteer community groups doing conservation work on parks, but the Adopt a Spot program is a much more coordinated and facilitated approach, which started, I think, last year or sort of 18 months ago as a much more structured delivery of volunteer programs, which has also incorporated health and safety practices working with volunteers. But we did use the opportunity of the quarterly report to put a bit of a spotlight on it, because it has become so popular and it is becoming a very community popularity program that we're running. So we did want to bring it to councillors' attention.
Thank you so much, because your report went on to say that you've been doing this work with schools for the last 35 years, but this is more focused. Who actually organises the groups? Who are they volunteers as well, the coordinators?
Through the chair, within council, Viv Dyack is our officer that works within the parks team that does the council coordination. And within the community, that can be very, very, very different, depending on what that group comes to council and asks for. So it may be an individual, it may be a group, it may be a school.
Thank you. I've got Pete and then Gail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a few questions. First of all, on page 23, under 7.4, regarding the Seasport building, the comment there is a report on the subject is programmed for a future meeting of the committee. I'd kind of like to know when that is, and subsequent to that, on page 40, when I get to it, the commentary under progress on this on the Seasports building does have 5.4 million in the long-term plan sitting under years 4 to 10. I wouldn't mind some commentary on when actually that would be sitting exactly in the LTP.
Thank you. Through the chair, the next Sport and Recreation Committee will be bringing a report on the Sea Sports building. It was deferred from today while we were getting agreement with the user groups on how to progress. We're actually meeting with them next week to make sure that everybody's on board with how we're going. So that will be the 5th of November, I think the date is, for that report on the next, on an update on that. As you've noted in the project sheet on page 40, the full year forecast for years 4 to 10 is 5.4 million, and that's a forecast as of now, or as of June, at the end of June. And the report that comes in November will provide more information about when the report in November is more about that the building goes ahead and what option it goes with. There are options around a rebuild or a new build. This 5.4 is based on a new build option, but we're still working through those costings. And I'm not sure if I've answered all of your question. Was there something else that I've missed there?
No, that's fine. Thank you. That's good to see that there's progress happening on that. I've also got some further questions, Mr. Chair, if I can, please. 9.5 on page 24, a regional sport and active recreation facility strategy for the top of the South Island. I am interested to know when that will be presented to the committee, and indeed if there's any forethought as to whether there's going to be any implications for the LTP process in regards to that, because indeed what it says here is the last bullet point under 9.5 is to suggest a prioritised list of recommendations for the possible development or rationalisation of facilities. That could have some implications for LTP. So I don't need the answer now, but at some stage I think all of us would be interested to know when that strategy will become. I presume the strategy, since it's top of the South, is in conjunction with TDC. I presume it's when it says regional strategy, it actually means regional. And Marlborough. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, there's various LTPs we're going to need to.
So through the chair, yeah, thank you for those comments. So we are expecting to workshop that in the new year, and we will certainly be looking at those prioritisation of actions and how they line up with the LTP. So we'll be looking at that correlation there. And it is a top of the South strategy, which includes Kaikoura, Marlborough, Tasman and Nelson, but it excludes Bulla at this stage. So it encompasses the Sport Tasman region as well, as looking at those sport activities there. But we'll certainly be bringing that back to this committee.
Great, just two more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair, very short ones. 11.1 on page 25, regarding utilisation of Trafalgar Centre. I just note that under COVID-2, activities at the Theatre Royal and at the School of Music pretty much have stopped because they can't indeed, well, it's very difficult for user groups to put on events in there because of the restrictions in terms of physical spacing and stuff. And would note that indeed there have been plenty of cancelled events that potentially could have taken place in the Trafalgar Centre, utilising the space to allow physical spacing. In that regard, I would like an update, if possible, on the investigation into acoustic panels for the Trafalgar Centre. I'm sure I sent this question through earlier, but if there was a chance of getting a verbal update on that, I'd appreciate it.
So through the chair, I don't have anything to give you an update on that now. It is a project that we're working at to look at being able to deliver something through the AMP. So staff are currently working on investigating that, but sorry, I don't have that information to deliver now.
And last one, Mr. Chair, thank you for your indulgence, is on page 41, city play space. We're all very aware of the success of the outrageous success of the pop-up park in the last week. And I'm really interested to see that there is provision made here for a destination play space located close to the CBD for residents and visitors. And it's a similar question as to my previous one. The $819,000 that are set in the LTP as set out in the forecast there on page 41, given that the pop-up park is theoretically temporary, well, not theoretically, it is temporary, can we have any more clarification on which year this funding would actually take place, and should we be preparing for it right now?
Thank you for that.
So through the chair, thanks for that question again. I'd need to come back to you on that. This is very much a collaboration between the Parks team and the City Development team. So I'm happy to go and get that information and come back.
Thank you. Good points. So I think it was further out in the LTP, was that right originally?
That's well, I think it was spread over a number of years,
Okay,
and it still is spread over a number of years.
It may well be something that we need to give consideration for.
Put a finger on. Yeah,
I think
no, very good. And I think with what's been happening just down here, it sort of helps sort of lead into what can, or it's sort of almost like a tester for it, and community how they take it on board. Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you. I've got Gail, Matt, Rohan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got 4 questions potentially. Look, the first one's on page 27, and it's regarding the heads up that there might be an increase in the budget for the review. And my question is, has the scope changed? Because it was 20 and it was increased to 50. And now officers believe it's likely to be even more. So has the scope changed?
Mr. Chair, councillors, yes, I think as we got into looking at what the projects entailed, I believe that the scope has changed, and it's centering really around 3 projects for the marina. The first one being the direction on future marina governance. The second one being on the development of a marina development and spatial plan. That's we know where we're going for the future of the marina through the long-term plan. And the third one is a review of the assets and services so that we can then feed into the fees and charges and bring them back for the LTP next year. And I think when we looked at this through the annual plan, it was very much at the early stages, and I don't think we understood the full extent of the scope. And I think if we're going to do it, it's something which is significant, it's major, and we've got to do it properly.
Interesting, thank you. So the secondary question to that is, it still comes out of the marina budget?
That's correct.
Right, that's good, thank you. My next question, are you going right through to the end of the end of the agenda, right through to the spreadsheet on these questions? Okay. Okay. So my next question is on page 35, and it's just regarding the Stoke Youth Park, and it mentions that the preferred site at this stage is part of the Stoke Memorial Hall car park. Was that contemplated when it came to us before?
Mr. Chair, we had contemplated it, but we need to bring a report back to this committee. We are currently working with Whanake Youth, and Whanake Youth have been engaging with the local youth community and the various agencies in Stoke. Anyone who's had any interest in a youth facility in Stoke, the college, the intermediate primary school. They have come back to us with some proposals from youth. We're now in the process of drawing up a business case, which we need to bring back to this committee, and the business case will make a recommendation on the location.
I'll make a comment at this point then. I think there are very few car parks relating to that building, and there's not much that's nearby that's safe to walk from, and I certainly don't want to see people walking across from the police station area parking over in Bale Street. So I'm just raising a caution at this point for when you see the business case, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I think we're looking at car parks on the other side.
Yes, Mr. Chair, councillors, I think that's a very good point, Councillor Noonan. We're looking at, I think it was 37 car parks on the south side of the hall to replace those that are lost on the north side.
Okay,
and that we'll bring that back to you as well.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, I know, on the south side of the building. Right, my next question is the Modeller's Pond, your favourite subject. Page 37 makes some note regarding minimising the contaminants entering the estuary. I'm making a giant leap for mankind here, Mr. Chair. Is that anything to do with the fact that the pond was actually filtering the contaminants in the past?
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can answer that one as well. No, it doesn't. It means that we're providing a higher level of service. It means that the discharge into the estuary will be cleaner than it has in the past.
That's very good, thank you. The question needed to be asked and it's now been answered. I appreciate that. My final question is on page 46. It's regarding the parks and active recreation and the sufficient open space provided in the city. And it is a little bit of a one that I watch, because I realise that if we want to increase intensification in the city, that we need more space for the residents. And I can see that there's a little bit of when we're not achieved, and look, congratulations for all those that are achieved. There are only 2 out of the whole block that are not, so well done. But that one did pique my interest in that. I think that the more that we intensify, the more open space is required for those people, for health reasons and for mental health reasons. And I think it's just something that we maybe need to keep an eye on. The staff may have a comment, but I just wanted to make that clear from my point of view.
Thank you for that, because this will come up with like the wood area and the Trafalgar street development. And it may be a case of not so much the quantity of space, but the quality of the space, raising the.
I probably disagree with you on that, because I think that the smaller area you live in, you really have to have a space to open out onto. It's otherwise it's not good for you.
Yeah, thank you. I've got Matt Rohan Sensen.
Thanks, Chairman. Just picking up on the item regarding the city play space, and it's great to see green right across that line. But there's nothing in the project risks box. There's nothing in the project issues box. But I would like to know what is happening with a little bit more about what is happening with that project, given how much we want to do stuff in our central city.
Through the chair, yep, that's a good question. We are working with the city development teams of Lisa Gibellini's team, and my understanding is that they're looking to identify a location at this point. So until they find a suitable location, that's the main thing.
Okay, and is that a location? Does that location need to be something that council already owns, or are we looking at all options, private property, the whole shebang?
That's correct. Through the chair, looking at all options. So originally it was that money was included for Rutherford Park, and we're now looking together, looking at a space more central.
Right, speed the day, Mr. Chairman. Just while we're on the topic, there has been a story in the media about some bad behaviour at our pop-up park, but I've been down there a lot. And everything that I've seen has been absolutely fantastic. And one of the best things about it has been that there have been kids of all ages sharing the space and getting on incredibly well with parents and grandparents. I think we should be incredibly proud of what we're doing in that pop-up park, because the community has responded extremely well to it. And I think it bodes very well for the future of this city play space project. Just another quick comment on the topic of adopter spots, which is covered in the report. I got an email from the Upper Murphy Street Adopter Spot group the other day, and they said that Council Officer Viv Dyack has been, quote, amazing. And they listed, there's a long list of all the things that she's done for the group, and they're over the moon with the support they're getting from council. So well done, Viv, and well done, council.
Thank you for that feedback. Very good. We've got Rohan, Sensen, Judy.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair, Atamarie. Firstly, page Rua Takoma Waru, 28. Paddy's Knob, firstly, kino pai for mahi, fantastic work transforming that space. The only concern that I've had come through is around accessibility and for wheelchair use. And I'm just wondering, sort of more broadly speaking, how we incorporate accessibility into our design processes.
Through the chair. Thank you for that. It's certainly accessibility is always at the forefront of our minds with design. The community partnerships team has recently put out an accessibility plan for our facilities, which we're always looking at. So that's not just about the building code, it's about going outside the building code and understanding the broad spectrum of accessibility issues. So we've certainly been making a big effort to make sure we incorporate those strategies into any of our design. But sometimes we are restricted by the physical landscapes and those sorts of things, but it is definitely a prominent consideration for the team.
Good to hear. And then on to page Whātakoma Onu, 46. Just looking at that Trafalgar Centre usage, obviously COVID will have had a quite significant impact on it this year. We didn't meet it last year either, did we? So what are we doing, broadly speaking, to try up the usage of it?
Through the chair, thank you. This is quite an issue for the team. We did workshop. One of our very first AMP workshops was looking at the levels of service, and this was discussed there, how we measure our facilities, and is it a patronage measure or is it a booking measure? So this particular level of service will be being brought back as a review through the draft AMP, which is coming back in November, looking at have we got the right measure. So this actual measure was set before the Trafalgar Centre reopened after the earthquake strengthening work, so there was no benchmark. So we certainly want to revisit this level of service.
Because I remember we covered all that, and that was, we're looking at the, like you're saying, the booking or the number of bums on seats, as you put it, and both figures are extremely helpful, but we had to sort of work out a way, and it will come back. And I think, was that part of your question, how we're looking to, especially in COVID, use it? And was it, we've done a 50% discount over this year coming up, and I believe we've had a good response in that, and you might be able to comment further on that.
Sure. So through the chair, yes, that 50% discount was offered for community bookings rather than commercial bookings. But in the report, I said that only one organisation has taken that up, and that's because the other events have cancelled themselves due to the COVID uncertainties.
Okay, yeah, and it has been a bit challenging with some events that are using it and being out of the number of patrons, and they're using a floor and those sitting in the seats and juggling the two, but there's been some good compromises there. I see that the year ahead, because one of those things you always, people booking a year to 2 years ahead, and it's always a bit of a juggling act, but I see, and so much due to success, we had some difficulty getting the basketball in there because May and June were booked right out by some large events, and that's sort of the winter off season I would have liked to have thought. So there's, for looking ahead, there's seems to be a strong bookings. But definitely there's areas we can keep improving, and there's some good comments by Councillor Rainey in regards to making use of that from the other musical events, etc., coming across with the COVID issues. Cool. Any other questions there? Very good. I've got Rachel Sanson, Judy and Edgar, Kate Fulton, and Trudy and Mel.
Kia ora, thanks very much through the chair, and I'd just like to tautoko Councillor O'Neill-Stevens for doing numbers in Te Reo Māori. Good on you. Thanks, Rosie and Paul. My question's in relation to page 34, reserve development, and it's kind of more of a general rather than a specific question. I visited the Nelson South Reserve a while ago when I was visiting a former refugee family, and I have had some, I guess, ratepayers in the area raise concerns around the neglect of the reserve, and just wondering if there is an audit that happens and how, whether there is any moves to, I guess, give that reserve some TLC. And I think it's because I think it's really important as a council that we are ensuring equity in our reserves for different communities, and it is a lower socioeconomic community, and it is really neglected. There's concern from families that it's not visible from the street, that it's a place, you know, they've found, you know, syringes and that kind of thing. And often the grass isn't mown and there's not really play equipment for the kids. There's no picnic bench and stuff like that. So I'm just wanting to kind of raise that and wondering whether there's an audit that's undertaken and whether that could be you know, added into the audit list.
Through the chair, thank you for that feedback. That's really valuable, and I might have a conversation with you afterwards if that's right, just to get some more detail. But to answer your question, yes, at the moment we are undertaking an audit of our reserves. And it comes back to the earlier question around the intensification. We're looking at all the reserves that are in the intensification area as to what level of service improvements they might need, but we're also extending that to the other reserves as well. So we should have a really good picture by the end of this year on which reserves require some improvement.
Thanks very much. And just one really quick follow-up question. Obviously, the pop-up park is going so well. I had a few minutes free and was going to go and grab a cup of coffee the other afternoon, but I couldn't find anything open. It was 4 o'clock on a Monday. And so I actually ended up at the pop-up park and it was just amazing. Like it was, even as a, you know, it was such a lovely place to hang out and watch everybody having a great time. So it's just wonderful. And it made me think, is there any moves afoot to consider doing something like this in Stoke?
Through the chair, I think the Stoke Youth Park could be, you know, sort of a reflection, or you could see some similarities there.
Thanks.
Chair set, I've got Edgar, Fulton, Brand.
Thank you. Wharengi Hokarua, page 40. Sorry, this is just a further question, and if you can't give the answer today, just when you do report back, it would be interesting to know. But I just do note with the Sea Sports building that $1.3 million has been spent to date, which seems to be a lot of money considering we don't have anything yet, you know, no design, etc. So unless that's an error, but yeah, it says in here 1.325 million has been spent to date. So if you can't answer that now, but I would, when we get the report back, would really appreciate to know what's been spent.
Jane.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair, when we bring the report back, I'll include in there what's been spent to date.
Thank you. And then just following up on Councillor Sampson's question, I also noted, so for example, I had asked a question about, because I was noting the levels of services on the back spreadsheet and just wondered if there was one that we needed to look around about, you know, quality and provision of play equipment. And then even, so like Cattle Market Reserve, I noted the other day, there's no signage off Waimea Road to indicate that it even exists. And so, you know, some simple things like that would be important considerations as part of the audit process. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Fulton.
Thank you through the chair. I just have a couple of questions with regards to the Grampians Reserve, so 12.34 through to 12.36. I've had quite a lot of emails with concerns around how the fences were installed in terms of damage to the soil and land there. Can you just outline in terms of sort of when you're putting in grazing or re-landscaping, how you have regard to that initial environmental impact plus re-landscaping the land?
Through the chair, so all of our sort of projects would go through a business case, which would be looking at the impact that they're having on the environment and how we minimise that. Unfortunately, and with this particular project, the instruction to the project manager and the instruction to the contractors was not to cut away at any land at all, and unfortunately that wasn't followed. So there has been some cutback of the soil there, and we need to rectify that. In terms of cutback of the vegetation, that was minimised as much as possible to get that fence in, but there will be some restoration planting to put back in for those, for anything that's been damaged. There's also been, I know I went up there with the staff to just have an inspection afterwards. There were already some quite sort of significantly dead trees, one particularly a big fig tree that we had a look at the base and it was all quite rotten out, so it looked a lot worse than it was, but we would always look to minimise any damage to vegetation or cut back.
Okay, that's really good to hear. Thank you. I've got 2 more questions through the chair. So when we went through the dog bylaw process, we were very clear in indicating where dogs would have to be on lead and off lead. Is it leash or lead? I can never, on leash, I think, and off leash within the Grampians Reserve. Do those dog bylaw maps reflect where the new grazing areas are?
Through the chair, I understand from the staff that were involved from the parks with that bylaw that the grazing areas that were known at the time were incorporated into the bylaw. This particular area is not advertised as dogs on lead, but grazing areas will be changing as the requirements change. So the signage is a request to keep your dog on lead rather than being covered under the bylaw.
Okay, so that's slightly concerning to me because we want to be very clear in our bylaw where dogs were required on leash, and I wonder if we need to go back to the bylaw and update that. Presumably you'd been doing the planning for the new grazing area prior to us going through that process.
Through the chair to answer that, so I'd need to just touch base with the staff that were actually involved in that bylaw review and how the grazing was analysed.
Okay, we just might need to follow up and make sure that the bylaw aligns with the grazing plans for those areas, because I think it was an important part of the hearing process was hearing from the community about wanting dogs to be off leash in certain parts of the reserves, and so we were very clear that the requirement for them to be on leash was where sheep were, and we're clear on the maps as to where sheep would be. I have one more question on that. I understand there has been quite a lot of attacks on sheep recently, and I'm just wondering, does that reporting come back up through Environment Committee or?
Through the chair to answer that, I'm certainly not aware of any dog attacks on sheep recently. We have had them in the past, and that's sort of 2 or 3 years ago. There was quite a few attacks of sheep, and that's when grazing became difficult. But we've subsequently worked with the graziers and done a lot more signage and done a lot more promotion around dogs on lead and understanding the issue there. So I'm not aware of any that have happened recently, but certainly in the past.
Okay, we might need to just follow up on that as well. And I think that was a Sir Stanley Whitehead rather than the Grampians, but I understand there has been some repeated, unfortunately. So we just need to make sure that our sheep are well looked after.
Thank you for that. But yeah, no, it's a great asset with Mr. Newton and the sheep, and we want to make sure they're looked after, but there wasn't. No.
And then I have one more question through you, through the chair. It was with regards to page 38 of the agenda on the weed control program. So I just note that the current budget, I note that we've talked about in the long-term plan increasing the budgets to allow for greater weed control. I just wanted to get an update on how that's going within the existing budgets, because it sounds like you've identified more weed control that you could be doing and that you're fully committed with the funds.
Through the chair, that's correct, and that's certainly a challenge for staff, but working through our ecological restoration plans, it's prioritising those areas of where that money can best be spent, but we'll certainly be reviewing that through the AMP.
and you've just employed a new member of staff to look after that area?
Through the chair, yes, it was just prior. This report is a little bit old, but that was just prior to COVID lockdown. We employed Jeff Churchill, who's managing all of these areas for us now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
That's great news. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Brand, Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just going to start off with some real quick ones before I get into my little bugbear. On page 37, and I just want to follow up on where Councillor Noonan and Andrew, Mr. Petheram have briefly touched on about the modeller's pond. It talks about, on page 37, it says currently proceeding with preliminary designs. Can I just get some reassurance that there are the key stakeholders are actually part of that, like the Modeller Society are involved in that preliminary design?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councillor, yes, that's correct. And we met with the modellers 2 weeks ago, and we listened to what they were interested in, and they had some very good suggestions, mostly relating to the future of the model train. They had some really good ideas and how we could accommodate them. So yes, and that's going well.
Awesome, thank you. And then my second really quick one is on page 35. And I know, again, Mr. Petheram briefly touched on that with Councillor Noonan's question near the car park area. But it says on page 35 that it's expected the first stage of construction begin mid-March. What does that actually mean?
Well, councillors, it will depend on what the plan says. But at the moment, the feedback that we've had coming through from Whanake Youth included a small theatre space, a small dance space. There was an area for skating. There was something for basketball and just general sitting around areas. But that's just very much the preliminary draft that they put to us.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm just going to get into my bugbear, which is page 27 and page 39, which refers to the Nelson Marina and the Marina hard stands. I've sort of gone back through the different quarterly reports that we have been receiving, and I'm a little bit perplexed or confused or frustrated, take whatever word you like, because in the end of the 30 September quarterly report, we were orange and now we're red. And we talked about the consent applied for by December 2019 for the additional 8 sealed bays, and that the budget would need to be adjusted because the 525,000 needed to be revised due to the geotechnical information, and that we would get the report on the 10th of December. So the 10th of December quarterly report stated that in the new year, we're going to be seeking further dollars, and a report will come in February 2020, and it will determine if we carry on in this or the next fiscal year. And it was determined that a 2-stage approach would be taken. And then I get a little bit confused by the quarterly report based on the 10th of December 2-staged approach, because stage 1 said it was completed in the fiscal 2018-19 for the 700 metre squared area of the hard stand, and that stage 2 is planned for the fiscal 19-20 year of the approximately 1,200 metre square section. But we've got this abatement notice, and the cost has now gone from 525 up to 867,000, including contingency. And then in December we were still orange, but then in March we went red, and it said that the concept design was meant to be completed in November 2019, but there was a delay while the wash bay location was confirmed. And then it talked about the 12 bays for the financial year. And then we get the next one. I'll come to this report in front of us, which is your page 2039, and it talked about abatement notice has been received and compliance conditions of the consent are still outstanding because we're seeking a new consent because of the better environment outcomes at the Marina hard stand relating to the disposal of the storm and wastewater and stuff. But we discussed all of that back in March, and I understand there's been delays because of the COVID lockdown period between March and now, so I appreciate that. But are we, because this is just receiving a report, and I'm just sort of like, we're almost a year later and we're still trying to get these hard stands sorted. And each time I ask about it, I just keep getting told, yes, it will be done by this date, it will be done by that date. And here we are, September, and saying that it'll be done by December, but back in March I was told it'll be done by September. So I'm sort of seeing the dates get pushed out and pushed out. So my question is really, do we actually know what we're doing, and can we get a completion date, and can we just get on with it?
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, you're right. There have been some delays with this project. It is a complex project that involves quite technical design aspects that we've been working our way through as they come up, but they are complex. This abatement notice that we've received recently has highlighted the fact that we need to make our marina hardstand compliant in line with the abatement notice as soon as possible. And the actions that we're undertaking now will meet those abatement notice timeframes and requirements to have a compliant hardstand as soon as possible, really. The plan is still to have an upgraded hardstand in the future, which will provide a better level of service and improved biosecurity outcomes for the marina. But we realise that that does need these technical aspects completed and confirmed through the design process before we can get to that stage. Andrew, I'm not sure if there's anything I've missed there that you want to...
Through Mr. Chair, Councillor Brand, we met yesterday with the project manager, and we believe that if we were writing this report today, it would be all green. We believe that we are now on track, and we accept that it's been unsatisfactory. We accept that the performance of that has been less than desirable, but we are confident now that we're on track.
Okay, so on track, according to this report, is December 2020.
That's correct.
And we will be green.
We believe that yesterday when we discussed it, looking at the work that's coming through from our consultant, lining up the works that we've got programmed over the next couple of months, that we're on green now.
Okay, so just to clarify for myself there, so are we working on the current resource consent that we have to do those particular bays and get that compliant while we wait for the additional consent change that we want to do the further bays? So when we say that we're going to be green, it's only on the current consent, not the one that we're processing through for the change. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And then my next bugbear, is still the marina, is page 27. It talked about the resolution that the council made about the 20,000 to 50,000 from the marina account, and I know Councillor Noonan touched on this. At that time, I was very reluctant to increase that money and give that, because we've actually had quite a number of reports done on the marina, and I know we've asked and the conversations have been had about sorting out what actual governance structure of the marina it should be and moving forward. And part of that was that 50,000, to increase it from 20,000 to 50,000 from the marina account, meant that we would actually have a report that we could use and make a decision going forward. Now, I read this and it says that we've obtained further information and believe the cost will likely exceed the budget available with the tenders. So the cost keeps going up. We just keep doing report after report. And I don't see anything substantial or beneficial to progressing with this, and we just seem to be throwing money out the window. So I'm sort of a bit concerned that we don't have the expertise, and again, we seem to be chasing our tail trying to find somebody that has the expertise to actually help us figure out what we are doing with the marina. So in here, I take it a recommendation will be coming asking for more money from that closed account. Can we not actually make an informed decision on the information that we have from the previous reports that we spent a lot of money on, as well as the expertise of the people that are providing information to us?
Mr. Chair, councillors, I think probably the short answer is that we've changed the scope from when we first discussed it through the annual plan. We are now not only talking about a future marina governance. We'll be doing an investigation considering the current model, the interim solution that we're putting in place, but looking at what other marinas, how they operate throughout the country, and whether any of them would come up with a better solution for Nelson. We're also looking at marina development plan to feed into the spatial plan for the central city. And that development plan, the marina development plan, will also feed into the long-term plan so we know where we're going for the future development of the marina. Plus, on top of that, we want to do an assets and services evaluation. We want to look at what's happening down at the marina, what are we providing, and we want to ring fence a lot of those activities so that the people who are using particular services pay for those services. At the moment, it's somewhat blurred. If you use the boat ramp, are you contributing towards marina berths? If you're on the marina berths, are you contributing to boat storage? We want to get that clearly defined so that the people who use the marina pay for what they get. So it's quite a complicated process. And we accept that we have to have someone who knows about marinas, a professional person has experience, not just locally, but throughout New Zealand, and knows how we can best operate a marina. So it's not a simple process.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Petheram. Thank you for that, and Jane. And I'll just end on a positive note then on the marina on page 46. Very simple. It's achieved, and it was quite frankly, the marina berth occupation meets its target. So let's just end on a positive note for the marina. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. I've got Councillor Courtney, and then we'll...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to continue on from where Councillor Laurie left off. He was commenting on the, what is it called, the city play space. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say something at this point, because there have been some people, because we've got to ensure the ongoing popularity and success of that, no question about that. And it's doing everything that Councillor Laurie said and Councillor Sanson. Totally agree with that, but there have been some people, a limited number, but nevertheless, there have been some people that felt uncomfortable. We need to reassure them, Officer Rosie, that we're onto this. There is a watching brief over this, over the security, the age group, the safety, and all that type of thing. I want that assurance from you today. I know that people in other fields have given it to me, insofar as the offenders unknown and are being monitored. So I just wanted from the council's point of view that we are doing something similar in respect of the overarching, monitoring of what's happening there.
Through the chair, just to clarify, this is the pop-up park next to the library.
Sorry, yes, I call it the city play space, but it is the pop-up park.
Yeah. Thank you. So through the chair, this has been a transition for us. So the pop-up park was developed and created by the city development team, and the parks team have just taken over the ongoing maintenance of it just this week. So we're still in that transition with the city development team, and where those service requests around these concerns around security are going, we'll certainly more than happy to undertake that. They're all investigated and looked into, but we'll certainly be working with them around design constraints and how any of those messages are passed on to the police.
That's excellent. It was more around the people that we using the facility that needed to be perhaps monitored. But anyway, that's fine. I'm happy that things are in train and you're watching that as well.
Thank you for that. And maybe there was issues over the last few years outside Burger King. I don't blame Burger King for it, but there seemed to be a group of clowns, for a better word, were adopting that space when it was lit up and causing a bit of issues. I'm wondering if it's the same clowns who were sort of just saying, oh, here's a lit up area, and they've moved across. So it may be a case of talking to Burger King, because I think they successfully just sort of deferred those people around with a bit of a change of layout. I don't know if that is the case. It's the same group, but it may just be one of those teething things. People get so excited and over passionate.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, the pop-up park is not lit at night. There's a light over the basketball hoop, but the rest of it is not lit.
No, I realise that, but there was just allaying the fact that with Burger King, they changed the way that they promoted the area or lit the area, and there may be other lighters from there. Maybe it's the same clowns getting excited about the area. It might be just one of those teething things. So I just wonder if it's a case of speaking to the neighbouring businesses and working with them.
We also noticed that when something new like this is established, we get a behaviour like this for a small amount of time, and it generally dies down.
Yep, no, good point. Thank you for that. I won't hold you anymore. So thank you. Cool. Thank you. Move us. Thank you. Very good. Very efficient. So that's for moving us out of public. And we'll report. Thank you. But the next one, I'm trying to get to lunch already. Thank you. So moving us out, receiving the report and moving the report. No debate, obviously. Moving a second. Those in favour, those against, carried. That comes to the end of the public. We've got confidential public excluded next, but I'm aware of it. We've got lunch period, and I'm also aware we've got some people and experts, etc. As part of that, we need to carry over through that. So what I'm going to do is get us to move into public excluded and then adjourn for lunch, 12:45, and I'll have a chat with Mr. Ball, just checking that works out with, and Paul works out with those people standing in the wings or maybe who are presenting. Is that going to work out if we move to lunch, 12:45? The lunch now,
Mr. Chair, I think it will. I can give them a call, and they did say that they had a wide window put aside. So
okay.
So are you saying around 12:45?
I'll make it 12:45 back here to start. So if I move into public excluded now, and we just need to make sure we've got that right, because we've got 3 members who will need to remain or come in for that. So we'll move that as part. You'll see I've got my runs sheet here that we've got Mr. Ward, Hemi and Duncan Lang from St. Bresson. Margaret Soderberg, thank you. Okay, very good. So what we'll do is we'll move out of public and take note of those members that will need to be here. So I've got Trudy moving us out of public into excluded. Can I have someone second that? Rohan, Councillor Neil Stevens, and a note that we've got Mr. Ward, Mr. Toya, Mr. Soderberg, and Mr. Lang to be able to come into Margaret. So we've got 3 items in public excluded, as on item number 8, and we've got regards to the potential land exchange. This is quoted in the public, and the
just querying why Margaret Soderberg.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. I'll let Roger. I'll let you to define those 3 items. I've got them listed here, but I'll get you to define those members and which items. They won't be here. I'll just remind they won't be here all at the same time, but we will have got 2 items here with Mr. Hemi Toya, which we'll do it. 2 items.
The potential land exchange and the first 2.
Those first 2. What I'm going to do is I'll get Hemi to stay in here for both those items, so we can have them present alongside staff, and then when it's appropriate, they will leave to give us a chance to ask questions, strategic questions, etc., without them present. But these 3 members will be in for different items and won't be here at the same time, obviously. But we just need to pass that resolution. Thank you. So Roger was going to clarify.
Councillor Rainey had a question first. No, we're not in public excluded yet.
Okay. No, we're not yet.
No, we're not. You haven't put it.
So I'm about to. I'm just before we go to public excluded, I need to clarify who's going to be staying here and who's not before we move in. Okay, thank you.
I'll just cover that off. So the individuals that you're passing the resolution on. So Chris Ward of Policy Works has provided technical advice, in particular on the land exchange report. Hemi Toya and Margaret Soderberg representing Koata Limited, and Duncan Lang assisting Quite a limited.
No.
Beg your pardon. Oh, the Brook Reserve, beg your pardon. Right, I didn't read all the way down. Thank you.
Thank you, Vass. We've had it. Moves in second. I'll move that we move into public excluded. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you for that. Thank you for your patience. So I'll adjourn